Hello and welcome to our final episode of the Bison Basketball Show this season. I'm Brian Shawn. Finally, after a long and tough road in the Summit League, it was time for tournament play for both the North Dakota State men's and women's basketball teams. The NDSU men earned the 5 seed after winning their regular season finale at Omaha and opened up with 4 seed Fort Wayne in the quarterfinals. The Mastodons handed NDSU a loss on Senior Day 2 weeks prior, but it would be the Bison jumping out early, starting the game on a 10-0 run. Cameron Hunter finding Tyson Ward in transition for the reverse lay-in. Jared Samuelson would come off the bench to hit a trio of three-pointers. The Bison hit 7 triples in the first 20 minutes. NDSU would shoot 56% overall thanks to more good looks inside. Dengu would use the screen and slam down 2 of his 14 points. It would be an 18-point lead for the Herd going into the locker room. The Bison continue to cook in the second half. Spencer Eliason to a cutting A.J. Jacobson for the lay-in. He added 12 points on the night. Fort Wayne would go on a late run to pull back within 4 when Paul Miller drops in the straightaway 3. Miller was 5 of 8 from outside the arc. But the Mastodons would not go quietly. John Conchar, a monster game, scoring 29 points to go along with 12 rebounds and 6 assists as the lead is chipped down to 5. Then with 1:30 to go, Bryson Scott able to somehow flip in this reverse lay-in. He also poured in 29 points. It's a 1-point game. Fort Wayne a chance to go ahead, but Scott losing the ball and Ward jumping on top of it, calling a timeout. North Dakota State would ice it from the free throw line, going 5 of 6 in the final minute. Paul Miller hitting a pair late to make it a 2-possession game. Conchar's three-pointer with under 10 seconds to go is off the mark, and the Bison would hold on in a tight one, 86-82, to advance to the Summit League semifinals, shooting 11 of 21 from three-point range.
It was a great game. It was a fun game. We jumped out on them a little bit. We came out with great energy, and just like we expected, they came back after us. They're a great offensive team, and it was a fun game to play in.
It was tough, especially since a couple of their guys really started to get going. Conchar played really well. Scott played another fantastic game. I take pride in being the leader of this team, and when things kind of start to go bad, I kind of put it a little bit on my shoulders to kind of get the guys together and try to make a play.
I got so much respect for North Dakota State. Dave does a great job. Before him, Saul did a great job. Before that, Coach Miles, there's just great tradition there, and winning tradition. They do it the right way. They keep the game simple, and they just teach them how to play the game, and they play with unbelievable toughness.
A quick turnaround less than 24 hours later for North Dakota State, taking on top seed South Dakota State. The Bison would be playing catch-up from the start. Paul Miller rattling home the tough step-back three-pointer, the only 3 of the first half for NDSU. But there was no slowing down the Jackrabbits. The Bison going to a zone defense, Reed Tellinghusen throwing it up to Mike Daum for the slam. Daum scored 19 points and grabbed 11 rebounds. Tyson Ward able to maneuver inside for 2 of his team-high 15 points, but NDSU in a deep hole, shooting just 26% in the first half. SDSU led 38-20 at halftime. The Bison would make a charge early in the second half, going on an 11-1 run with a small lineup on the floor. A.J. Jacobson knocking down the 3. He scored 10 points on the night. Then Miller would step in for the steal, cruising in for the lay-in. As the lead is cut to 8, Miller would move into 5th place on the NDSU career scoring list. But it wouldn't be enough as South Dakota State gets rolling again. David Jenkins Jr. poking it away from Cameron Hunter, leading to an easy basket on the other end. Jenkins Jr. a game-high 24 points as the Jackrabbits roll for the victory. The Bison shot just 5 of 24 from three-point range and had only 6 assists.
Those are some of the things that we talked about during the season, finding a consistent game, and there's spurts throughout the season that we showed promise. I feel like consistency may have played a part, but I feel that sometimes the ball just doesn't fall in your court.
North Dakota State has come away with at least 1 Summit League tournament victory 5 times in the past 6 years. We're just getting started here on the Bison Basketball Show. David Richman joins us in studio next to reflect on this past season.
The Bison Basketball Show on Midco Sports Network is presented by Nodak Insurance Company, Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, and Proceed.
Welcome back. We are joined by NDSU men's basketball coach David Richman here for our season wrap-up, Dave. And, going to the Summit League tournament is always a special time. It's an opportunity. You never know what's going to happen when you get there. And I know the one thing you had talked about, it, if you get the first one, anything can happen. And you guys had a great first-round game against Fort Wayne. That'd be a lot of fun to be a part of a game like that.
It was, and like we were just talking about off-air, Brian, I'm really happy for our guys to go out there and get one. We played very well at Omaha that last regular season game, and then had a pretty good week of practice. And you could see the way our guys came out in that first half. They really locked in, executed a defensive game plan, played with great energy, played with great joy, played with great passion offensively, moving and cutting and sharing the ball. And luckily we did too. We came out and gapped it a little bit more to start the second half. But like you'd expect a talented Fort Wayne to do, a well-coached Fort Wayne to do, they made a push back and we were able to hang on.
And to be in a one-possession game, all of a sudden it was an 81-80 game, and Paul hit some huge shots down the stretch. I mean, what a tremendous experience for your team, even your young players, to go through something like that, to know what that's like.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul did what Paul's done his entire career, hit some big shots. And even in the moment, you're like, okay, we needed that. And you go back and watch it again, you're like, wow, those were big shots. And but even a guy like A.J. Jacobson, we put A.J. Jacobson on Kason Harrell, a guy who'd hit 6 threes in the 2 prior games, each of the 2 prior games against us, and he really locked him down. And we got contributions across the board. Tyson Ward was terrific. Cameron Hunter hit some big shots, big free throws down the stretch. So really pleased and proud of our guys in that effort. And unfortunately, we weren't able to carry it over, but that was a good win for our program on Sunday.
I know trying to bounce back less than 24 hours later against a team that's rested and very, very talented. Obviously, South Dakota State, only 1 league loss all season long. I think you just kind of ran into a buzzsaw, didn't you, Dave? I mean, at the end of the day? I
said that same word in the post-game press conference. You're exactly right. And we'd spent a lot of energy, hanging on to that lead, getting that lead Sunday. You knew the way South Dakota State had played Saturday against Western that they were going to be locked in, and they came in. And I gave them a ton of credit afterwards, too. I think where they made the most improvements this year was defensively. I think King and Key in particular, those 2 can change some things. Skylar Flatten does a great job on the wing, really eliminating some guys with his length and athleticism. And then obviously when you got a talent like Dom and the way Jenkins played the last 2 games, they're tough to beat.
Just real quickly, Dave, your parting thoughts as you move into the offseason here.
I never want to call it a disappointing year because we did some things. We won some nice games. It was good to get that tournament win. Our guys had a tremendous amount of success in the community and in the classroom. But certainly a frustrating year. I think that's the word that kind of comes to mind when you lose 9 conference games by an average of 5.5 points and you felt like you were close and just couldn't get over the hump, couldn't find that consistency, I guess is the word. But it was a fun group to be around. I know we got a bunch of guys that are really excited about getting back to work here after spring break and got some pieces that I think, again, like you and I were just talking off air, I think there were some growing experiences for 3 guys come to mind, Chris Quayle, Rocky Cruiser, and Cameron Hunter, 3 guys that were on the floor in a Division I college basketball games for the first time. Sometimes you can talk about that, but the only experience really is just that experience. And so we've got a hungry group. We've got a group, I think, that a bunch of Bison guys that understand what it takes. And but we got a chip on our shoulder too. 2 seasons in a row now, haven't finished where we wanted to be, and 3 if you go back, where our expectations are NCAA tournaments, and we're gonna get to work and get back and get that taste in our mouth.
All right, Dave, thanks as always for everything this season. It's been great chatting with you, and we'll see you next year.
Yeah, we really appreciate all you guys. I know things continue to progress with Midco, and we're really excited to be a part of it and appreciate everything from your end.
All right, thanks so much. Dave Richman here joining us in the Bison Basketball Show. Stay with us, more to come. The Bison women had a tall task, taking on South Dakota State in the opening round of the Summit League tournament. We'll recap that after this. Welcome back. The North Dakota State women's basketball team had nothing to lose coming into the Summit League tournament as the 7th seed. The Bison a chance to knock off rival South Dakota State, with the 2 programs meeting for just the 2nd time in tournament play. The Bison looking to advance to the semifinals for the first time since 2009 and would hit 5 of their first 6 shots. Sarah Jacobson a couple of early 3-pointers, 1 from the wing, giving NDSU the lead. Later in the first quarter, Macy Quilvang, the lob inside to Riley Jacobson for 2. Jacobson a double-double with 19 points and 12 rebounds. Game tied at 18 after 1 quarter. Michelle Geislerova would come off the bench to score 10 points, hitting a couple of triples. The Bison would once again take the lead, 28-25. but South Dakota State would end the quarter on a 23-3 run. Macy Miller coming up with the steal and taking it in for the lay-in plus the foul. The Summit League Player of the Year scored 19 points as the Jackrabbits led 48-31 at half. The Bison would pull back within 12 early in the third quarter. Tyra Spencer hitting the corner three. She added 7 on the afternoon, but NDSU would pull away in the fourth quarter for good. Ellie Thompson taking it all the way down the lane for the bucket. The Jacks had 4 players in double figures and go on to win it 87-62. South Dakota State would score 19 second chance points and had 12 steals overall. The Bison finished their season 9-20.
We were a young team this year, and I think confidence grew in everybody as the season progressed, and I think the more we work together and individually, the more confidence that we'll have, and I think that experience this year will carry through next year for us.
We made a lot of improvement over the season, and so that makes me very confident going into next year already, but I mean, this was a tough game, and they're really good, and we played as hard as we could, and so yeah, we definitely improved over the year.
We now welcome in Maren Walseth to chat about the Bison women's contest against South Dakota State on Saturday. And Maren, a chance to go up against a rival. You had nothing to lose going in as a 7 seed, and you jumped out fast. All of a sudden you look up, it's 14-7. You had to like the quick start, the execution, the energy was all really good.
It was. I think you're right. We had nothing to lose, and we played with a lot of confidence, something that we had talked about in the week leading up to it. You have to believe, and most certainly the first quarter and the third quarter, we had nothing to lose, and we played very well.
Just to see your team come out like that in that environment, it's the first time a lot of these players have had a chance to play on the floor. You're freshmen, but it's still a pretty new experience even for your returning players. I'm guessing a confidence for them just to go there and show they can play well in stretches.
I think that speaks to them and who they are. They've never backed down from an environment or from a situation. Thinking of going into Frost Arena, thinking going into at UND. Those environments for some young people could really get the best of them. And I'm very proud of how our players have handled those environments and those moments at such a young age.
And you talked about the first and third quarter, the second quarter, all of a sudden things kind of got on a roll, and then the boulder kept going down the hill a little bit. It was a long run as South Dakota State, do what they do a lot of teams, and that's really kind of put you on your heels for a long period of time. But that is probably the one thing this season that you will look on or work on this season is how do we stem the tides of some of these longer runs instead of maybe being a 24-3 run, let's make it a 12-2 run and get back in the game.
Or maybe a 6-2 run. Can we try that? And I think that's something that has been a constant conversation this year and something that will certainly be addressed. And how does it happen within the team? Those 5 on the floor, who's going to step up, who's going to put their foot down and demand a change? It can't come from a substitution all the time. It can't come from a timeout. It can't come from the coaching staff all the time. And that's where our growth and maturity, you'll see the biggest leap for us this offseason.
And speaking into the offseason, I know you're having some player meetings right now as you get ready to go into the offseason, get back into workouts. Take us through kind of what your plan is going to be here over the next few months.
We need to kind of wrap up and put a bow on this season while preparing for our off-season individual workouts, group workouts, strength and conditioning. And a lot of that is identifying what our team needs are and what our individual ceilings are and where we can really make some strides. So there'll be a lot of intense workouts. The girls will certainly take some time for spring break as the coaches will be on the road recruiting. So a few different things happening before we all get back together.
Put a wrap, I guess, on this season for you. I know, Maren, there's been some ups and certainly some downs and some more ups and downs, but how would you kind of characterize the season from your standpoint?
I think the ups and the downs are best described as adversities and challenges, and that's really what life is about. And how do we attack those challenges? How do we learn from those hills and valleys, and how do we improve? And so with the majority of our team coming back and in such a young group, they're only going to age and mature and go through those experiences. I'm excited.
All right, Maren, thanks as always for the time. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next season. Thanks so much for coming in and spending a few minutes with us every week.
Thank you very much, Brian.
All right, Maren Walseth joining us here on the Bison Basketball Show. Stay with us, more to come. Paul Miller, one of the all-time greats at North Dakota State in men's hoops. We'll have a feature on his story here at NDSU after this. In the Division I era, North Dakota State has had some memorable runs along with some of the top players in program history. Paul Miller cemented himself as one of the best to put on a Bison uniform as a significant contributor all 4 years. But nothing about his journey has been easy. Sometimes growth and development are easy to see. Height, muscle mass, foot speed, or vertical jump. But in other instances, it's more difficult to spot. and the pains that come with can be taxing. Paul Miller's growth at North Dakota State has been a process of continuous learning, which has included some tough lessons along the way.
Somebody once told me parenting and coaching would be the most challenging, but yet one of the most rewarding things that you ever do. Paul would tell you the same thing. We've both challenged each other in a lot of ways, but we've both grown together. We're both better off today than we were yesterday or last week or last year.
Growing up in Waukesha, Wisconsin, athletics were not a big part of life early on.
I had a group of guys in my elementary school that were all really competitive. My parents will tell you I wasn't really that into sports until I got to elementary school, and just being around those guys and always trying to win, always trying to compete just got me really into all sports, and especially basketball.
Once he got to high school, the hardwood was the main focus, earning a spot on varsity as a sophomore.
And I thought from my sophomore to my junior year was when I really developed and kind of took that next step and thought, hey, maybe I could play at the next level now.
Miller was offered a scholarship by 2 Division I schools. He signed with North Dakota State in the fall of 2013, but just a couple of months before coming to campus, head coach Saul Phillips left for Ohio, with assistant Dave Richman taking over the program.
We hit the road to kind of go in the home of all of those kids that had signed and just see where they were at in the process and see if they wanted to stick with us. And Paul was the one guy that wasn't there.
Oddly enough, I was on spring break down in Florida, so I wasn't there, but my parents really liked the thought of that, of Coach coming to visit with us, and just showed that they were committed still.
Miller solidified his decision to stick with NDSU after a phone call from the only returning senior on the roster.
I got a call from LA right away, and he was like, what are you thinking, man? And I was like, well, what are you guys thinking? He says, well, we're all gonna stay. And I was like, if you guys are in, I'm in, and let's do this.
The 6'3", 190-pound freshman made his way to campus and contributed immediately, starting 6 games and playing the 4th most minutes on the team. But the learning curve was steep.
I had a couple games where I scored close to 20 points, and I was thinking, hey, this is easier than I thought it would be, and then I kind of hit a couple bumps in the road where I started to not play as well. I started to get down on myself, but I thought the older guys always tried to help keep my confidence high.
Miller helped the Bison make a return trip to the NCAA tournament in 2015, and in his sophomore year earned a spot in the starting lineup, leading the team in scoring, until adversity struck.
Now Paul Miller is a little slow to get up down at the other end of the floor.
But yeah, that was tough, having to sit out and watch, and I don't think I was a good teammate about it either. I was like, hey, I'm hurt, I can't help you guys, I'll kind of just let you do your own thing, and looking back on that now, 2 years later, it was probably definitely for me the lowest part of my career, and something that I wish I handled a lot better than I did.
Although not 100%, Miller was able to return for the Summit League tournament, helping NDSU get past IUPUI while struggling to regain his form. And just before the semifinals, the frustration finally got to be too much.
Look at Paul Miller on the bench tonight, again suspended for this contest.
As soon as he told me that he was going to suspend me, I was just devastated, But looking back on it today, I think it was something that I deserved. I didn't think I deserved to play in that game with how I was letting my attitude affect not only how I was playing, but it was being a negative presence in the locker room. It was kind of holding some other guys back.
Your greatest strength is your greatest weakness at times, and Paul is uber competitive. And when you're not out there and when you're frustrated with how you're playing, that can then have a negative effect if you're not able to rechannel in.
Miller returned for the tournament championship game, with the Bison falling to rival South Dakota State. He started every game as a junior, earning first-team All-Summit League honors, but has continued to learn valuable lessons, even as a senior.
When we played at USC, I was so worried going into that game about how I was going to play. We're at a top 10 team on the road. I'm thinking, hey, this is a great opportunity for me to go out and kind of showcase my talents a little bit on the national stage, and I kind of just did not play well at all, After that, I talked with a lot of the coaches on the team, my parents, a lot of my former coaches, and they told me the best way to get yourself going is to start worrying about someone else.
I've seen the progress. It's rewarding for him to see the progress and to see some of those successes happen. And that's what I've been so pleased to see lately is Paul being able to refocus and understand by helping somebody else out, he can help all of us out.
Miller's education on and off the floor is nearing its end in Fargo, and when the time comes, he'll walk away with no regrets.
It's been a blast for me. I wouldn't trade any of it. I wouldn't trade any of the highs, any of the lows. And hopefully people see that this year, I'm starting to develop more as a leader and aren't just focusing on the basketball side of things.
He's going to go down as one of the all-time best to ever put on a uniform, make no mistake from a player standpoint. But I think what he and I would tell you is just how much he's grown from a leadership standpoint, from a personal standpoint. That's really even made him finish a special career even more special.
Miller finished this season with 605 points, becoming only the 5th Bison player to score more than 600 in a season. His 1,719 career points rank him 5th in NDSU history. We're back to put a wrap on the season after this.
The Bison Basketball Show on Midco Sports Network is presented by Nodak Insurance Company, Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, and Proceed.
Back to say farewell and thanks for joining us this season on the Bison Basketball Show. We'll step away again and be back in the fall for the 2018-19 season. A special note of appreciation to our sponsors, Nodak Insurance Company, Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, and Proceed for their support all season long. That's a wrap. We'll see you next time. Have a great spring, everybody.